Welcome, everyone, to our Wednesday morning class that shall not be named. We now return after a little sabbatical for the holidays and for little health issues, but we're all good, ready to start again. I talked to Flossie, who is willing to host an event at her house if anybody wants to do one.
Yeah.
The requirement, though, I've already mentioned it to her, is that Eva does cook some food. That was a requirement for me going back up there. Doesn't have to be the 72 different things you cooked at the last thing at your house. 72 different options for 20 people. I took home like 4 Tupperwares and ate nonstop for the next 3 or 4 days. And my wife's like, "Aren't you gonna eat something else?" I said, "No. This is a rare treat. I don't know when she's doing this again. I am going to eat it all before it goes bad."
Oh gosh.
So it was
Anyway.
great. So we'll set that date later. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, to say the least, as we spend some time talking about the messianic characters in history: Cyrus, Alexander, Bar Kokhba, Shabtai Zvi, Napoleon. Probably those are the 5 most famous ones. Although there are many others through the years, but obviously if you're not famous, people don't write about you, you're not going to become as well known. Those are certainly the most, and then of course the Rebbe for Schneerson for the Chabad movement. We're going to talk about something completely different today, and that is Jews for Jesus. And it's a very interesting and scary topic in some ways for all of us as we understand the repercussions of this movement.
Hi, Ron.
So I'm going to begin with a story and welcome.
Yes.
I think that's Karen. Welcome, Karen. Yes, it is. And Karen, we're just starting. As I mentioned, we'll start talking about Jews for Jesus.
Get in. I got it.
And I don't know how you did this, Michael, but you somehow increased the length of your video on my video. And now you're on the side with a full picture of San Francisco behind you. What did you do to do
Hold on
that?
a second. Rabbi, I have no idea. Ron Schwartz just called. He's having trouble getting in.
Okay, let me email Ron again. I don't know how you
Okay,
did
Rabbi's
this,
going to
Michael.
email you.
Somehow increased the
Okay.
length of your video on
Okay.
my video.
See you soon.
Okay, let me send it to him right now. And we're going to pause everybody. I sent it out, but Ron may have a different email than he used to have, which is often the case.
He does. He does.
Which one is he using now? Is he not using the,
Oh, I have to look it up.
let's see, he's using the, okay. We're on YouTube, so I don't want to give out his email online.
It's like Ron and Arlene at Gmail or something like that.
Yeah, let's see here if I get that. And we're going to pause everybody as, see what the last one he sent me. I thought I updated his on the Zoom. Let's see if that's the one. I think they have a different one. So I'm going to send it again. Is that him? That is him. All right, good. We got him.
Okay, great.
Hey, Ron, I was just checking to see if, in the meantime, we lost Karen. She's coming back now. So we'll start over when everybody gets back on.
I have Flossie as our guest here.
Hey, Flossie, I was just mentioning a second ago that you've volunteered to host your house as long as Eva cooks some food. So thank you. Welcome to Karen and Arnold, Ron, Arlene, and Flossie, of course, Eva and Michael, and we'll start all over again. I just in the introduction. What we're talking about today is Jews for Jesus, which is also, as we know, a controversial topic in many ways. I know in my synagogue where I served in Dallas, I arrived there, I think, in 2002, and a year or two earlier, one of the students, who I was like 15 or 16, they had to kidnap and deprogram. which they could legally do because he was still underage. And I know when I was in Dallas, they would have what they would call their, it's a Jews for Jesus weekend. And I'm at the grocery store, I forget which one, and there's a guy just standing there. And he pretty obviously looks something like that. And I asked one of the cashiers, how long has he been here? And the cashier's like, they're here all weekend. And they just stand there looking at young people. And he started to come towards me because obviously I do look a little Jewish. It was a Jewish area. I'm dark haired, brown eyes. I was a lot younger looking back then than I am now. I was in my early 30s, but probably looked in my early 20s. And then I went like this. And he saw my yarmulke, and guess what he did?
Didn't talk to you.
He walked away. That's exactly right, because they're trained that if somebody's wearing a yarmulke, then they're very religious. So don't waste your time on them, because they're geared towards going after, teenagers, people, freshmen in college, people who are not connected. And so they have all this training to do that. And it's a very, very coordinated effort. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of it. Flossie, did you have a question?
Yes, I've heard there's a Jews for Jesus in Israel. Have you heard that?
Oh, yes. It's a very big problem in Israel.
How can they survive in Israel with?
Well, you got to understand, we'll go right to that point right now, which we were going to talk about. Jews for Jesus. Now, Jews for Jesus is Messianic. You look at Messianic Judaism as this, and Jews for Jesus is one organization within Messianic Judaism. It's not like Messianic Judaism there's an official Messianic Judaism, but there's offshoots, and we know there's evangelical Christian organizations. So you have to look at the law of Israel. That's really important to understand because it works for Jews, but it also has ramifications. What is the law in Israel state? And there was actually a law, the Supreme Court actually overturned it and said it this way. The law in Israel says you are Jewish if you have one grandparent who's Jewish on your mom's side, basically. Or you go through conversion. So what does that mean? That means if I am Jewish and become a Jews for Jesus, but I'm also Jewish biologically, that means I can make Aliyah to Israel legally, and they are legally responsible for giving me all of the benefits of a new immigrant. So any Jew who is a Jew by birth and can prove that their parents have a ketubah and their grandmother had a ketubah can immigrate to Israel. And so all of these Jews who have converted to Jews for Jesus moved to Israel, and legally Israel can't do anything to stop them because they're Jewish halachically. So there was a court case that said if you convert to Jews for Jesus, it means you're no longer Jewish. And so they tried to stop it, but then the Supreme Court said, no, you're Jewish. Obviously that has ramifications because if they can say, we decide who's Jewish in any other way, they can prevent anybody from coming in. So if you are biologically Jewish and you try and keep the Jews for Jesus for coming in because of this, that means you keep everybody. That means the government can just say, well, you're Jewish, but your grandmother's Jewish, but you're a Reformed Jew, you can't come in. Or you're not a Jewish person we like. So that's how Jews for Jesus has become part of Israel. They, serve in the military, obviously. There's nothing legally you can do to stop that. So it's a big problem in Israel because of the attempted conversion. It was a major problem, of course, even more so in the 90s because Jews for Jesus really went hard after the Russian immigrants because they were Jewish, but they had no Jewish background for, of course, decades. So Jews for Jesus in Russia is very big, and in Israel, obviously, there's not a lot of new immigrants to Israel from Russia like there were in the 90s, but it's still an issue. And so if you go onto websites, you'll see that a lot of Jewish organizations, in Israel speak about how to prevent this. It is one of the few, very few issues that the Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and Reconstructionist movements all agree on. It is maybe the only one that it's not considered they are Jewish. I mean, it is a rare case when all four movements almost across the board agree on something. I mean, obviously, my jokes are funny is one of the things, and then this would be the second one. So basically two things. I'm funny. And so let's look a little bit about, start a little just about the history of it, just a little bit, because again, Messianic Judaism is an overarching belief system. It is an organized system as well. And basically, it's kind of ironic that it's called Messianic Judaism because
It's not Judaism.
a lot of Jews are considered Messianic Jews. I mean, if you're an Orthodox Jew who believes in the Messiah, you're what? You're a Messianic Jew. It's just they've taken the title. And so when I say I'm a Messianic Jew, we don't say that anymore. We say I'm a Jew who believes in the Messiah. Because if we say I'm a Messianic Jew, which is literally what many Jews are, it has a different meaning today. So you have to be careful at be thinking that people who believe in the Messiah are Messianic Jews, because that is not the case. Messianic Jews is a very specific belief system in which you try and combine aspects of Judaism into your Christian belief system. Now, it goes way back. I mean, again, we have to remember the very first Christians would have been considered Messianic Jews. It's equivalent to kind of in many respects. They were Jews who broke off and started following the teachings of Jesus. The first Jews to do this were keeping kosher and were still sacrificing at the temple, and were keeping the holidays. And they just over time, through the teachings of Jesus, gave up a lot of these traditions. Messianic Judaism kind of brought it back, and it's been around since a little bit since the 19th century, but it really started to hit home and started to make a huge comeback in the 1960s, like the hippie culture. This idea that you can combine things, that, you know, the world's changing. And it, of course, is based upon evangelical Protestants who believe that Jesus obviously is the Messiah, but that Jews should be part of that culture. Now, we also understand why Judaism is so important to this belief system. Good morning, Larry. And that has a lot to do with the belief in Scripture from the evangelical movement. Now, I got to also add, not all evangelical Christians support Messianic Judaism. That is a myth. You know, not all of evangelical Christians want to convert Jews to Christianity. So we can't say evangelical Christians and Messianic Jews are the same thing, because they're not at all. There are evangelical Christians who support Messianic Jews, and there are those who don't. The Catholic Church does not support it. Most of the mainline, what we would call Protestant churches, the Presbyterians, Methodists, the Episcopalians, they do not believe that they don't support it. None of them believe they're Jewish. They all believe they're some sort of Christian sect. So, and evangelical Christians, I've met a lot of them through the years, and they don't, you know, they don't get upset about it, but they're like, you know what, you can't think that about everybody, that every evangelical Christian wants to convert Jews. That's not the case. So I want to make sure that is said. But it is supported mostly by Protestant, Baptist, evangelical Christians who are supportive of this idea. And it isn't always with ill intentions. You know, it started in the 1960s. The idea was, for some, that in order for the one of the thoughts is in order for the end of days to happen, a mass of Jews have to convert, which is going back to several passages in the New Testament. There's also a belief system that they should be saving souls. So that is actually, you know, altruistic in its form in many respects. That we're trying to save souls, that the end of days will only come, not when all Jews, because that may not be, but when a lot of Jews go through conversion. And so since the 1960s, they organized. There is a Messianic Jewish movement. And they have an organization, Messianic Jewish Alliance of America. It began a long time ago, but it really became much more prominent in the 60s. There's the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. So again, there's a lot of things they believe, obviously very similar to some of the things we believe. They believe, you know, that God is omnipotent. They believe, though, also in the Old Testament, what they call, and the New Testament, that they are both essential and divine. They believe in the end of days. Some believe in the Talmud, some don't. They believe in the Torah, and they believe in the Trinity and that Jesus is the Messiah. They believe Jesus is the Son of God, akin to what mainline Christians. What they do, though, is they take Jewish trappings sometimes into their houses of worship. And this is where the issue is with Jews. It's not that we are generally upset about their belief that they believe in the sanctity of the Old Testament and New Testament, or they believe they should keep kosher, which some do, some don't. And not even the rites of passages. It is, because they'll have Passover Seder, some will have high holidays. It is the purposefulness of their conversion techniques that create issue. Because, they are basically a Christian, they believe in original sin. They believe in the sanctity of the Trinity, all of these things. Yet, in religious practices, they sometimes mimic us. They'll have Saturday services. They'll read from a Torah. Their religious leader is called a rabbi. Some people wear tzitzit. They all wear yarmulkes. Again, kashrut practices vary, but a lot of them will keep some semblance of kosher. Not all of them, but some of them will. They convert people to Messianic Judaism in a similar way with the mikveh, which is akin for them baptism, but they'll call it the mikveh. The Jews for Jesus has been particularly troublesome. Now, again, Jews for Messianic Judaism and Jews for Jesus are not the exact same thing. Jews for Jesus is a form of Messianic Judaism created by a very specific man. His name was Moshe Rosen, who was raised in a Jewish home. He was raised Jewish. His wife became very Christian oriented later on, after they got married, or maybe, and he purposefully chose the idea of creating this organization to convert Jews to Christianity or to this Messianic Judaism or to Jews for Jesus. And what they do is very clever. Now, we all know the Hare Krishnas in the 70s and all these groups. So they did a lot of that stuff where they, would go to airports and that stuff. But what they eventually realized was, we looked at them and they were strange. They looked strange. And that worked a little bit in the 60s. But as the 60s kind of left, they ceased to do these strange versions of themselves, and they became more normalized and created campaigns to convert Jews. Very famous for, and I have a bunch of pamphlets, like we can go online, I should have pamphlets, like very cute pamphlets. A duck is a duck. we know a duck is a duck, and you go into it as a cute pamphlet. So of course, Jews believe in Jesus, and they have these cute little pamphlets. They would send people to convert Jews. Now, who are the people they sent to convert Jews to Messianic Judaism? It wasn't the rabbis they sent. It wasn't the leaders. They created training movements to train people who were their peers, other college students, other youth, their roommates in school. They'd invite them to parties and so forth. So it was all, and they also went after the kids who were least connected, not just to Judaism, but to anything. And so this is where it became very scary, is that not only did they have this belief system, but they were attempting to trick young, unaffiliated, impressionable Jews and bring them into their world. And it was specifically aimed at this group of people, which upset, of course, a lot of Christian organizations, because obviously they felt it was wrong to do this. Of course, all Jewish organizations, the Jews for Jesus especially, became very good at fundraising, and so they raised millions. Messianic Judaism obviously has been growing in America, in Israel, and in Russia. Those are the three places it's really been growing more and more. And it is this belief system that what they're doing is right. Now, you have to also understand, not all these are bad people. I mean, most of them are probably just regular folk who think they're doing the right thing. Not all Messianic Jews are part of this group of people that are trying to connive Jews into converting. A lot of Messianic Jews are just regular folk who want to combine Judaism and Christianity. They are not actively trying to seduce our children. So again, just like saying all evangelical Christians are supporting Messianic Judaism, which is completely false, not all Messianic Jews are Jews for Jesus, and not all Messianic Jews are purposefully trying to seduce our children. It's just not true, because I've met so many through the years who are just regular folk, and they don't understand why Jews don't support them, but they are not part of this. So it's particular groups that are going after our kids. Jews for Jesus particularly is an organization based on that. So Jews for Jesus. Now, they will often call themselves Messianic Jews. Why? Because Jews for Jesus has received negative connotations, but they are still officially Jews for Jesus. They pay a lot of money. If you look for Jews for Jesus online, you're going to find 5 advertisements at the first, and then a bunch of pro articles coming next. And then you got to go a little bit farther, and then you'll see the other stuff about them. Why? Because if you pay money to whatever the search engine you're looking at, then they will put whatever's at top. And everybody knows this. So it is a very clever way that if you go online, you'll see a lot of pro stuff and a lot of articles about how we don't understand why people don't like us type thing. We're just a religion. We're really Jewish and so stuff. They have tried to go into every place possible. Israel, obviously, we mentioned at the very beginning. And again, it's very difficult because Israel is a legalistic country. And you can't just go, you can't serve in the army because you're a Messianic Jew when you are a citizen and you're paying your taxes and you're required to serve in the military. So, I mean, you can't just say I'm kicking you out because I don't like your beliefs, because then they could do that for anybody. So they have to be able to serve in the military, and they do. In fact, the ultra-Orthodox don't, but the Jews for Jesus do, which is one of those ironies. In America, they serve in the military as well, and they have their own chaplains. The chaplains have requested time and again to be labeled as Jewish chaplains. So far to date, I believe the military still, identifies them as Christians, so they still require, when you're in the military, you have to wear what you have to wear. So the designation as a Jewish chaplain has a certain whatever stripe or whatever, and a Christian chaplain has their own, and they are still given the Christian one. Although I'm sure they're continuing to petition to have a Jewish one. But again, it is these issues that have continued to create havoc in many places, especially in a lot of areas that are very Baptist oriented, because there are Baptist organizations that are very supportive of Messianic Judaism. Now, again, let's make sure we understand not all Baptists are supportive of Messianic Judaism. That is not, a lot are not. So we can't give an overarching label to these organizations, except for maybe Jews for Jesus, which is an organization based on doing this very specific thing, converting Jews to the world. Now, as for, any questions or thoughts, by the way, or before we continue, Larry, and then Karen.
Could you, a couple of things, could you maybe talk a little bit about how are they organized? Do they have a central head of some sort, and are they elected? And also, could you give us an idea of some of the talking points? In other words, if we were to read their brochures, what are their, what is their program? What is their platform that entices people to join?
Oh, yeah. Now, let's talk about Messianic Judaism. Messianic Judaism, overall, there are different organizations, overreaching organizations of Messianic Judaism, not all connected. Jews for Jesus is a very particular organization which does have a head, and they all are connected. So all the Jews for Jesus congregations are connected and centralized, founded by Moshe, and it's still that way. Now, as for talking points, some very simple things. One, you don't say Jesus, you say Yeshua, which is a Hebrew name. Two, you show all of the beliefs that Jews, one, what? We believe in one God. We believe we're supposed to make the world better. We believe that we're supposed to be part of a community. We believe that you're supposed to keep kosher. We believe that you read from the Torah. You celebrate Hanukkah. You celebrate Passover. You celebrate the high holidays. You are supposed to celebrate together in a community. So these are the talking points, and they're very similar to what kids would have heard when they were growing up, except for the theology is very different. And so if you go to a Messianic service, there'll be a lot of similarities to what we do in terms of Torah and some of the prayers. Of course, they'll be centralized on Jesus and then and maybe the end of days and that kind of stuff. But it's a very particular. Now, are most Jews for Jesus Jews originally? No, but a lot of them are. I think it's like 30 or 40% were originally Jewish. And every year, I think like 8,000 convert, or some big number convert to Jews for Jesus in our country, or Messianic Judaism. But again, it's not just the talking points, it's the enthusiasm. It's who's doing the talking. It is not you and me talking, trying to convince these guys to do it, because we're adults. It is people their own age who have been trained specifically at conferences to do it, who go to particular areas to do it, who know what to say, who make sure they're not coming to these kids and saying, let's go talk about religion. They're saying, come to this party. We got all these great people. We're going to have fun together. There's going to, if they're above 21, we're going to have alcohol. There's nothing, we're going to have a party. You'll meet all these great people. We're going to go to the movies. So that's how you get people involved. It's not, let's come to this synagogue with me for services on Saturday morning, because that's not what, a 19-year-old probably wants to do. Eventually they get to that, but they're trained to do things, and we know what the training is now.
What
Karen,
happens, Rabbi? What happens? Just one other question, if I
sure,
could.
no.
What happens to the population of these young people as they grow older? Do they stay with the organization? I mean, it's
yeah, some of them do. Again, it is in many ways not that different. They found their group, they get married to somebody from the organization. Is not like, I mean, is it a cult is always a debate. Is Jews for Jesus a cult? It is not a cult in the normal sense. Jews for Jesus is not a group which says you have to live in a commune and you can't talk to people outside this commune, and 97% of what you make has to go to us, and we're going to set up your bride and groom, and you can only eat certain foods like rice all day so your mind will be hazy, and you can't have a driver's license, and you can't talk to your family. This is not what they do in that exact way. So in that way, it's not considered a cult. What they do is try and change your theology and belief system, but keep you in the world in some way. So it is a smarter way in many respects to do things. And again, they aim at people in their formative years, so they'll grow up with this theology and they look like regular people. I mean, it's not, they're not Hare Krishna from the 70s with the robes or their shaved heads where they look really strange. They look like normal people. And most of the people who are doing this are doing it because they want to help. They want to save their souls, or they want to bring heaven to earth. So that's something important to realize, that, they evolved over time. Karen.
I was going to, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to share an experience, and a number of years ago, 35 years ago, when I was living in Atlanta, there was a Messianic synagogue, if you will, not far from where I lived. But anyway, they had run at the time I wasn't affiliated with the synagogue. And a friend called me just before Rosh Hashanah. She saw a big ad in the Journal-Constitution, I guess, announcing that they were doing, they had Rosh Hashanah services, and you didn't have to buy tickets. And we thought, this is great, let's go. And they didn't understand what it was. And we walked in, and I just pulled up their website. I was curious. It's, it looked like a rabbi up there. I mean, he was dressed like a rabbi. There was an ark, there was a Torah, or maybe more than one. But once they started getting into it, it was like all of a sudden it hit me. This was not, what I thought it would be. And I had to get up and leave. I was so just aghast at what I was hearing. And in fact, as I was leaving, the rabbi said something about, I don't remember what, but it was like he called out the fact that I was leaving. And a lot of people, some were in kippot, some not, but it was a very scary experience because I didn't know what I walked into it not knowing what Messianic Judaism was.
And that's an excellent point, because a lot of the people who are part of the organization are Jewish, are originally Jewish, so they have common understanding of the traditions, but not just the tradition, the culture, how we speak. I mean, you go to these services and you'll see Shabbat Shalom, let's have Kiddush. Oh my goodness, I had such a good week, Baruch Hashem. I mean, these are the phrases they will use. And you go on their prayer books and they'll have prayers in Hebrew and with transliteration. It's kind of a transitioning to Christianity in many respects. And they understand which words they cannot use. Some Jews for Jesus, there's, whatever they're trained not to do. And they understand how to use what you know already and just change it. Jesus was a Jew, and we believe he was a Jew. And that's also a big part of it, because for a lot of centuries, Christianity did not really talk about Jesus as a Jew, but they will say, that's one of the first things they say, Jesus was a Jew. Obviously he was a Jew. He lived his whole life as a Jew. Of course he was Jewish. And so this is what they do. And it's a very, very professional way of doing things. And so that's what's really impressive in a scary way. They are also not anti-Semitic at all. They will preach very specifically, we are against anti-Semitism. If there is something that goes on the shooting at Tree of Life. I mean, the Messianic Jews and the Jews for Jesus are very outgoing right away, saying we do not support this. This is the worst thing. So it is empowering for some kids to see this and become this. It's not born again. It's kind of a transition in many respects to being born again, sort of. But born again means you were a Christian in the beginning. This is kind of a fundamentalist way of tricking Jews into becoming. They use passages from the New Testament that are supportive. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Gentile or the Greek. So the Jews are first and the most important. And that's why we want you here. We are so excited that you're Jewish and part of our group. So whereas we as Jews continually worry about anti-Semitism and violence, they worry about it too. I mean, they're saying the exact same thing. When we talk about we're worried about violence against Jews, they're saying the same thing. So, and if you don't know what's going on, you would think it's something very different than what it is. And they're educated people. These are and most of them are just not subversive. A lot of them are just thinking they're doing what's right. And that's why it's so difficult to combat. And they're not doing anything illegal either. This is not like, those cults where they're stealing money and they're making you sign things you don't understand. They don't do it. They're not doing any of this. Larry.
Are their beliefs, would you say, more in line with progressive Judaism or Orthodox Judaism?
It's a combination. I mean, that is not always.
Are they respective of LGBT community or mixed marriage or race?
I think is dependent on who they are, but I think a lot of them are not as supportive in that area. But some probably are. Again, for instance, that they're not universal in their Jewish traditions that they keep. Like some will probably be more kosher than others. You're not required to wear a yarmulke. So in that way, it would appear more like a Reformed synagogue probably. But again, they're not going after the Orthodox Jews at all for the most part. They're not going after the Reformed Jews who are part of the youth group or in Sunday school or confirmation students. A little bit maybe. They're going after the kids and people who are not affiliated. So they're not coming to Sunday school because that's like a why waste my time? Ron.
When my son Gary was at Purdue, he told us that two young ladies knocked on his door and invited him to a party, which turned out to be Jews for Jesus. So even then, they tried to infiltrate into colleges and universities.
Yeah, and that's their number one place. I mean, colleges is number one on their list. Who doesn't want to have two girls or two, come invite me to a party, or two guys that are, handsome and suave want to invite me to a party? I mean, again, if you're in college and they say, listen, we're going to party with people of the opposite sex and they're going to meet people and have fun. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Ron, sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. One other thing, you mentioned that they don't want to talk about Jesus and Jewish. But Arlene took a tour to one of the universities in Greenville, South Carolina, who happened to have one of the largest collections of religious art. And they came to a painting showing Jesus as a baby, and on the table was a whole circumcision kit. So Arlene said, can you tell us about the circumcision of Jesus? You know what? They wouldn't answer her, and they quickly walked away from that painting.
Yeah. And again, they will talk about it. They'll say Yeshua and all this stuff, but that is not what they're doing at the beginning because they have training. Michael.
Well, we had a neighbor who was a Jew for Jesus, and I was working, but my wife was asked to come over during Sukkot, and we had backyards which were like 8 by 10, and they had a sukkah in the backyard, and the woman called it a tabernacle, I think,
Oh, my God.
mishkan. But Eileen said it was very much, like any other sukkah she'd ever been in, and the woman was not so much proselytizing as explaining, and of course, the emphasis was on Yeshua, and it was. She said, "I'm sorry, she's not home now, but it was an interesting experience," she said, and
Yeah.
glad she went, and that was it.
And they're not all going to be so overt about it. I mean, who are they really focusing in on? Russian Jews for a long time, young Jews, and the elderly who are lonely. I mean, they're not going for people who are, really connected, Karen. But I mean, but they're going to be welcome. They're going to be nice people. I mean, that's the whole idea.
I just want to share, I'm looking at this website of this congregation in Roswell, Georgia, where I used to live. And I just clicked on holidays, and they list every Jewish holiday and how they celebrate it. They don't list Christmas, but they list Resurrection Day. And if you read the description, it's clearly Easter. I mean, it's also the date, but I mean, they describe Yeshua and what happened to him and the resurrection. So it's like these little bits, but if you read all the other descriptions, Hanukkah sounds like Hanukkah and Sukkot sounds like Sukkot, and they build a sukkah, but you kind of almost have to read between the lines and you'll pick little pieces up. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, that's the whole point, is they venerate Judaism.
Right.
And they are not insulting any Jewish practices at all. I mean, if you keep kosher, great. If you don't, great. If you believe in God, great. You celebrate Passover, great. So the LGBTQ thing may be a little bit different for them, but they may be. I'm not as familiar which ones are accepting of that. I think some are now. But you're right. I mean, again, that's the whole point. So is it officially a cult? No, from certain perspectives, but it does have cult-like doctrines in the way they bring people in. And usually they don't go after high school kids. I mean, I think they try sometimes, but again, high school kids obviously are legally not adults, so parents can do things to prevent this. But once you hit 18, you can't go kidnap somebody and deprogram somebody who's 19 years old, because that is illegal. Probably Flossie, and then Larry.
Are they successful when people were trying to have their children deprogrammed?
Yeah, I don't think it happens as much anymore, the deprogramming, because I think there's been a lot about it on TV nowadays, and I don't know if they're going after, probably 17, 18-year-olds, but they probably aren't going after that many young little kids, because again, that can be illegal and you can go to jail for that. So there is still deprogramming going on, but it's probably not the same as what we remember from the 70s and 80s, like with cults where they kidnap people. But yeah, I mean, you do have to do it. Again, a lot of people lose their children to this world, and they will still love them, but they'll be Messianic Jews, and it could happen to anybody, and it really happens often to kids who are not, or young people who are not connected. Karen, and I'm sorry, Larry, and then Karen. Just Larry.
How large an organization is it? And do we have an idea of, is it growing or?
It is definitely growing. Messianic Judaism is growing, still growing. I think it's maybe 400,000 in the US. I have the statistics here somewhere. Let me find those. And it's growing around the world. I don't know if it's growing as much as it was a few years ago, but it still is growing. I have the numbers.
Population is mostly young, college age kids, would you say?
The ones who are converting, yes, but not the ones who are already there. But the ones who are converting are usually young. It's usually young people, seniors, or Russian immigrants, or people like that. So I had the numbers. Sorry, I'll have to find the numbers here. I have them right here somewhere.
400,000 would, about how many, do they have an idea were formerly Jews of the
I
400?
think it's around 40%.
I see.
So a lot of them are, but I mean, that's who they do. I mean, you can convert to it. So let's say you convert to Messianic Judaism as a Christian, you will not be considered able to make Aliyah, but you can convert to it.
What is a conversion? Is it a baptism?
Yeah.
It is, they use the word mikvah, but it is a baptism. But they will use the word mikvah, obviously, to make it sound
Jewish.
more Jewish. I had the numbers right here just a second ago. I have to go online to get them again. What are they? Holy cow. Let's see if I have the numbers. All right, I don't remember what the numbers are.
We did.
They are good at raising money too, obviously, because they have a lot of support from certain evangelical groups and certain Baptist groups. That's where they get most of their money. And most of the money is individual donations. It's like over 90%. This is where they get their money. So I can't find the numbers. I'll have to look at it. I had the whole numbers. I put them in there specifically, and I lost that.
Jewish person started it.
And so what we'll see is it is, again, a very evolving way of doing what they do. I mean, in the 60s and 70s, it was about hippies and strangeness and cult-like, and now it's just they look like everybody else. I mean, there's no...
You had mentioned that they're one of many messianic groups. Are
Right.
there others that are also as large as they are, or using similar tactics that are not called Jews for Jesus?
Oh,
but-
yeah. I mean, others do too, but Jews for Jesus is by far the most famous. You have others in smaller groups doing the same thing. This one is just a very organized national organization. So there's about up to 250,000 Messianic Jews in America, up to 20,000 in Israel, and up to 350,000 worldwide. So it's not a huge group, but again, we're very small people. And Messianic Judaism, now remember, Messianic Judaism is a little different because Messianic Judaism is the overall thing. Jews for Jesus is a much more organized, we're going after Jews to become like us type of organization. It is a organization set up to go after our youth. That's why it's so alarming, and that's why there's so many people who are nervous about it. It's because of that purpose is basically the entire purpose of the organization. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on out there to combat it. So I'll send an article if you want, or I'll put this website for this Orthodox rabbi named Tovia Singer, who is one of the main proponents who try and fight this. And he has you can go online and get, like a workbook on how to prevent it or how to combat it. He had this article I just gave is a great article talking about how they use words like kippot and tzitzit and Arona Kodesh and bima, almost using kind of Orthodox words and copying and trying to do that. And it's really a very interesting, sorry, it's a little long, but it's really interesting. He has some copies of pamphlets they've used both in America and Russia. And it's really quite impressive. Actually, I'll just put it up here. I'll put it up here. This is, I've seen tons of articles. This is a really good one. So this is, I just copied Preying on the Jews. I put the website there. They use
Right.
Kodesh.
Wow.
I put highlighted these words. And then if you go here, you'll see, this is, they use Hebrew.
Mhm.
Is using and then they'll use, prayer book that looks like this.
New Testament.
It says Habrit HaChadashah, so like the new covenant basically is what it says, And they'll have pamphlets like this, a training manual. This is one of the manuals they use for training people how to convert or bring in Jews. And here's something else. You must understand your Jewish friend. You must avoid that which will keep him away from the Messiah. You must create an interest in spiritual things. You must make him want what you have. You must follow up with him. You must be prepared to answer his questions. So it's a very organized way. And if you just go on that line, I put it in there, you can just copy on it. Then you see some pamphlets here. That should be one right there. That's more of the sharing. And then over here, where's the one in Russian? I think I missed it. But you can see it's a pretty long article. Here's the Messianic Passover Haggadah. Here's invitation for Passover. They use Hebrew. They use they've got the Star of David. They've got the burning bush fire. They've got the menorah. So the Seder is a big deal because obviously it's a thing we all remember. Here's in the rush they do in Russia.
Mm.
You want to make sure they have it. So it's obviously I can't read this, but it's the same thing. This is the training card. So really good article. They're all obviously wearing Stars of David, but sometimes they'll have this. You see the Star of David, but of course the inside is the cross. Here's another example of Messianic jewelry. Got the fish symbol, which of course is a traditional system, not as popular today, but a lot of people know about the fish symbol, which is not only a Jewish symbol, it's used in other cultures, but they got the menorah, they got the Star of David. And then right here, they pray on the three groups I mentioned earlier. And again, Hamashiach Shel Yisrael, the Messiah of Israel. They'll have another, and so it's a really organized group. And as I mentioned earlier, so this article is preying on the Jews, which is a really good one. So I put that in there. That was probably, I've looked over a lot of things, but he is pretty much, he comes from an Orthodox background, but he's one of the experts on this. And it's scary, but again, what is the best way to combat these organizations is to educate our kids, make sure they have Jewish friends, make sure they're connected, because it can happen to anybody. I mean, we all know kids have difficult periods in their lives when they're very impressionable.
Would you say Hillel is probably the counter?
Hillel, of course, Chabad is bigger on campuses nowadays, but I think religious school, having friends, teaching your kids, talking to them about it.
But that's not necessarily, it's the unaffiliated that are kind of like religious school, or they're more affiliated. What about the elderly? I saw the elderly mentioned there.
Yeah, the elderly are a very big part of it because obviously a lot of elderly are lonely and they've lost their spouse or they're not connected. You go to senior homes, you go to senior places like Sun City, you go to places where people are looking for connection. And also the elderly sometimes can be, tricked into donating money as well. And also they're, so, but they're not as big on doing the illegal stuff. Like they're not going to send you illegal things to do. That's not what they usually do. So they're not scam artists in that way where they're trying to convince you to do what they want, but not in an illegal way generally. Michael. And you're on mute, Michael, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just was moving my hand.
Okay, sorry.
I do that a lot.
There will be no more hand moving by any Jew on this program, which would mean we have to cancel the program. Arlene, then Karen.
Okay. Quite a few years ago on Long Island by us, a Jews for Jesus group was coming in and they were getting bigger and bigger. At the time, the chief Chabad Long Island Rabbi Teldon, he and his group got involved, and I don't know how they did it, but they actually broke up the whole Jews for Jesus group. They went in, they infiltrated, and somehow or other the whole group, the whole group broke up. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to combat them. Again, but we have to remember, this is not a group of illegal thieves that you can go and report to the police. They're not doing anything illegal. I mean, if they do try and subversively try and convince seniors to donate money, then you can prosecute them. But if you're going to the house of somebody and saying, hey, you want to be my friend, we're hanging out, you're coming to my church, you want to make, you're coming to my temple, you want to make donations, I mean, there's nothing illegal about inviting an 18-year-old kid to a party. You know, certainly if there's alcohol, it's illegal, but I don't think, but, so it's not a criminal organization in that way. So that's why you have to be very wary. It's much scarier to deal with people wearing suits who look like you than dealing with people who are wearing robes and have shaved head and are singing at the airport, like we all remember from the movie Airplane.
Mhm.
But I was going to say, you showed that when you were going through that document, there were pictures of these, I don't know if you can see me, with their arms raised.
Right.
I mean, I think I remember that was one of the things I noticed when I did go to that Rosh Hashanah service years ago. It's like, Jews don't do that. And just, I'm sitting here scrolling through this website of this Beth Hallel, it is the name of it, in Roswell, Georgia. And there's so much Judaism, but snuck in between are little bits of,
Yeah.
You suddenly realize there's a lot of Christianity in there. So I just want to read one little quick thing. This is their teen, the temple, they call it a temple, the temple teen director. She grew up in a Reformed Jewish synagogue in Indianapolis. After recognizing that Yeshua did indeed fulfill the prophecies in the Jewish scriptures about the coming Messiah, her family was instrumental in founding the first Messianic congregation in Indiana. So it's kind of this, where she picked it up, maybe in college, I don't know, but just, it's there. It's worth looking at one of their websites.
Oh yeah, and again, you'll have it, and
You'll get
they
a
have
sense of it.
all these cute pamphlets, and they do aim it at little kids as well because they want to at least grow up doing it. But once you get to be an adult, you make your own decision. And I'll show a little cute pamphlet, here. Oops, it's this one, and I'll just open up a cute image. Here's one like this. You see this, you got to jump, Yiladim for Yeshua. You got to jump, kids for Jesus. So you'll have all this stuff on there as well. And they make it cute. I mean, it's they'll use stories and pictures like other people have. So it's a scary thing. And again, it's big in certain areas, but they try and go everywhere.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
How did they get to these young children? The only place where they would be without parents would tend to be school. And I can't see them hovering around the school and getting away with it.
Yeah, I mean, they get parents to bring their kids to their school and stuff, young families who are not connected. Again, the bulk of what they're doing is going after college age and seniors, but they have things for all ages to sneak in. I mean, you go online and you order stuff. If you want to order a Seder thing or a children's book, you got to be careful because you may be ordering something that, you don't know what it is, and it'll sneak it in. And it's all the time. Not as much now, but for a while there, people would bring stuff to me, and I'd say, "Wait a minute, this is a Messianic Jewish thing or Jews for Jesus thing." Hope you realize that. So, but education and the connection is the best way to combat it. And again, I'll reemphasize, it's not all Messianic Jews, it's not all Baptists, it's not all evangelical Christians. So you have to make sure and mix that stereotype.
Rabbi,
Yes, Flossie.
you mentioned with educating the children. I feel that's very important, being a former teacher, but something you do at our shul and others, teaching children how to enjoy their Judaism.
Yeah, and that's
I think
important.
That is important. Not that the children just feel they're learning, but with Purim, with different things, that it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's an activity with the family.
Yeah, and again, that's how you do it. But you do the best you can and hope. So, but you have to educate your children that there are people out there who try to take advantage of them, and we'll try and trick them a little bit. So Any other thoughts before we get prepared for the next class? So we do not have a topic set for the next class, I don't believe. So anybody have any ideas? And also Flossie was very kind to say she'd open up her home. Does anybody have any idea what's a good date for you, Flossie?
Rabbi, next Wednesday, I won't be here, so.
Oh, no, I'm thinking like in a couple of weeks. I don't want to do it that far. I
Okay,
mean,
yeah,
we have to do it
let
far
me
in
look at
advance.
my calendar and see.
I have a question. Does anybody know anyone who who can read Yiddish fluently?
I mean, I can read it fluently. I just won't understand what it means, except if it's
Well, I might understand what it means if you read it fluently. But
because
I-
Yiddish
I,
is just Hebrew. So I,
what is the reason? No, it's not.
I mean,
It's-
the letters are Hebrew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
it's different. I mean, there are double vowels.
Yes, yeah.
It's a different structure. And I used to be able to read it, but that was decades ago. I read it fluently, but anyway,
I don't know
I came
anybody-
across a picture that's 100 years old, and I'd like
Are you
to-
looking for, Michael, are you looking for somebody to translate something? Because we have a
Yes.
very good friend in the Boston area. She's relocated there from New Jersey. And she's quite fluent in Yiddish. And if you gave me the document, I could, email it to her somehow.
I can do that. Thank you,
Or
Larry.
you can call her and I'll give you her information. I'm sure she'd be happy to.
Well, I can just take a picture of it. It's not, it's just, 2 sentences. And I'm just curious because I recognize the people in the picture as family.
Yeah.
They look like family, but I can't read what they wrote. And it's, I mean, I could, but it would take me hours.
Yeah, and there is an
So anyway, thank
organization
you.
that does it as well. So, they have the Yiddish organization that will translate.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'll get in touch with you, Larry.
Okay.
Sorry about that. But the next class will be next week. So that, of course, is the first week of February, first day of February 1st. Does anybody know what class? And then we'll see that anything anybody wants to study or any group of things.
You're talking about doing it online? I mean, on
Yeah,
Zoom?
online. Yeah, we're gonna see about
Yeah.
setting up a date maybe in March or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
With anybody have any topics they want to discuss? It can be something we've already discussed or something we haven't, just depending on what you want. We can go back to Kabbalah. We can talk about, we've done a lot through the years. I'm happy to set up a schedule of things.
And Larry and I talked about this. There was an article in the Jerusalem Post a few weeks ago. It's not anything new, but it was the chief Sephardic rabbi in Israel talking about conservative and Reform Jews in an incredible vitriolic way, and in fact going on to say that he'd rather deal with unaffiliated Jews.
Oh yeah,
than,
definitely.
And I thought that might be an interesting discussion or class about their how they approach how the ultra-Orthodox approach.
We could do that. We could also talk about the, what everybody else is talking about is the new government in Israel
Yeah.
Mm.
and see, obviously, what are the implications of this new government, which are far reaching and in many cases, from my perspective, troublesome. Why don't we do that for next week? And then we can talk a little bit about because it's so mixed in with politics in Israel. So we'll talk about the new government in Israel. And one of the important things I think we need to remember, and I know when I spoke about an anti-Semitism, and somebody, was wondering why Jews are not supportive, a lot of American Jews are not supportive of Netanyahu, thinking that Jews are not, they're not supportive of religious Jews. They don't understand that it's more about them not serving in the military and not paying taxes than anything else. So the far right in Israel is catering to a group of people who don't do this, which in America, that's not how it works here. So so we'll talk about that next week. If the government lasts that long. And Flossie, give me some in dates. I'm thinking maybe March. So give you some time. March, we do like March 1st, March 8th, or March 8th is the day after.
I don't
Purim.
think she's there.
Oh, she already
in
left?
the
Okay.
room.
Okay, so I'll talk to her later about it and send out a note.
We'll
Alright.
mention it to her.
All right. And Karen, if you're interested in being in the Purim Spiel, we're about to start writing it. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll give you a hint
Yeah,
right now.
I was on your website yesterday filling out an application,
Well, oh, great.
membership application. And
Well,
then
just
Stuart
since you're
came in-
filling an application, and I mean, I'm not going to say you're required to participate in the Purim Spiel, but you are.
I know.
It is on March 5th, just to let you know.
Okay. Okay.
So tell anybody else you know who may be interested and who lives in the house with you.
Did anybody? Yeah, exactly. Did any of you see us do Larry, you were there, weren't you? When we
It
did
was
the
great.
Purim
It was
Spiel?
absolutely
That was a
fabulous.
lot
That
of
was
fun.
a great. So we'll start
It was fun.
publicizing it soon.
Yeah.
And we'll probably do it in the same way. We'll have that one practice in the morning and then just let people improv.
Are you going to do Star Wars characters again or something? Or
No, last time we did Harry Potter, but we have
Harry
a new
Potter,
rabbi
right.
at the conservative synagogue, and he is, is an actor, so he's going to help me write it. So
Oh,
or maybe write it himself.
it's going to be a joint program, you think?
It was a joint program last time as well.
Oh, we had the conservative last time? I didn't
Yeah, it's
remember
just that I did most of it because the rabbi there was not that big into. I mean, he
Oh,
usually
this new rabbi.
participated.
Oh, right.
I mean, he
right.
acted in it. I think. Did he act in it last time? I don't remember if he was.
No,
a
I
rabbi.
don't think so. I don't.
But it's always
I-
a dual participation because the Sunday school is both conservative, Reform, and
Right,
Orthodox.
right.
Right, okay.
But with the new rabbi, you always have to ask if he wants to do it
He
with
might,
us, do it
yeah.
himself. But he said he wanted to do it.
He met him twice in the last couple of weeks. We
Yeah,
were-
he's an actor, so he's more into it, than
He
many.
read a Shiva minion a couple of nights ago.
Yeah,
2
super nice
nights ago,
guy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do you
he's
want
very
to say
nice.
anything about the new cantor that we're getting?
Okay.
Oh yeah, she's terrific. She's such a sweetheart. We'll start something that stuff. She's gonna start July 1st.
Huh.
Just a bubbly, fun, interesting woman and 2 kids, and I think she's gonna be a lot of help.
Yeah, I looked her up on the internet at the synagogue in Pennsylvania, and she has quite a background.
Yeah, she's I think just so personable. That's what we really, I mean, obviously we want somebody who can sing, but we want somebody who's gonna be really outgoing and able to teach and do stuff.
Yeah, she's very involved with the children,
Yes.
adults, everybody, and Leslie said that she has a beautiful cantorial voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not mine. Let's face it, but it'll do. But she'll start July 1st, and we'll throw like, to probably well, let's see if somebody up there will want to host something so we can have her we'll do small events all over the place so she can meet people. I think that's probably the best way to do it instead of having just like big events here, if you don't mind. But I think you'll like her. She's really outgoing. I mean, she makes me look quiet. I mean, she
Just
so
have it-
sweet, loves to meet people, and is just great.
Does
we
she
don't
play a
we don't-
musical instrument at all? Does she play musical instruments?
She
or-
is learning guitar, so she may be doing some of that in the future. Although, so we'll see.
we don't have the monthly newspaper from Mikveh Israel, so perhaps someone can put it on the internet.
Yeah, we'll be doing that eventually too. Hopefully, yeah. We stopped doing that during the we just haven't got back to it because the person who did it got a different job, so that's why we haven't been doing it. But we'll start it eventually.
Arlene and I will be glad to host if she comes.
Oh,
to-
that'd be great, Ron. Thank you
to
so much.
Bluffton.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to bring her to Bluffton to meet everybody there when we have these
can do
things.
that, sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We live 5 minutes from the synagogue that she's from. We were at
Oh,
that
really?
Yeah, a couple of times, and she is terrific. But at that time, we didn't belong to that synagogue. We belonged to a different one. So we did it, but literally 5 minutes from that synagogue where she's from.
Very
So,
cool.
Yeah. We had seen her in action, and she's terrific. Yeah. Beautiful voice. It's true. She does have 2 little kids at the time. Well, we are here for 3 years now. So Maybe that was 4 or 5 years ago that we seen her. The kids were little and her husband was always at the synagogue with the kids and
Yeah, he's a real nice guy too.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
nice guy. Yeah, we
So
just met him for the
she'll
first
fit in.
time.
Yeah. So,
And hopefully, it'll, I think she'll love it here. So we'll see how it works.
yep.
All right. So I got that in Ron and I'm putting that down. So we will,
idea, right?
yeah, call you and thank you for opening your home. And we're going to set up a time with Flossie to go over when we can host the event in March, maybe at your house.
Well, Flossie is back. She's
All
here.
right. So Flossie, give me some dates. You can do it in March.
All right, let me look. My son was coming and he got sick and had to cancel. So let me look.
Yeah, just let me know. I don't want to do give plenty of
Okay,
people
But I
time.
offered and will do.
Okay, great. Give Ava plenty of time to cook.
He's hinting enough, Ava.
Oh, yes.
I'll do it the next time, like after.
Okay. All right. All right. It's on YouTube. That means it is guaranteed.
Still.
It is legally binding. If you say it on YouTube, you're required to follow through.
Oh,
Well, you
God.
guys, great to see you. I hope everybody's doing well. Look forward to seeing you more and more in person. And if anybody needs anything, please let me know. This is a great topic because it's so difficult, but if you don't bring it out, then,
Do those guys who are trying to convert Jews, are they working on a commission? Are they getting paid for it or is
no,
it
they're
just?
not. They are just regular people. They're people who believe in what they're doing. So that is what's really impressive and important to understand, that if you're getting paid to do something and I find out you're being paid to be my friend, it's different than if you're just a regular person and you're just part of this organization. You're dedicated to it. A very big difference. And they are very aware of that difference. So they do have paid people like the rabbi and the organizational people. Those are like paid, but
Yeah.
the people who go out, I mean, when somebody comes to your house of a lonely person who's a senior or a kid and is in their age range, they're not getting paid.
Yeah. Okay.
Great guy. Well, not great, because a pleasure, guys. It's always great to
Thank
see you.
Rabbi,
Rabbi Haas, appreciate it.
should I call the office and tell them that we'll do one?
Yeah, I'm going to tell Jennifer right now
Okay,
and then make sure we know, because I don't know if we'll do it in July. My guess is we'll start doing meet and greets with her in August, because July is usually a month,
Okay.
but it's a
All
little
right.
hard to get people. So I'll thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to go let them know right now.
we'll see you Sunday at the annual meeting.
I will see you there.
What is she doing?
We have an annual meeting for.
Yeah, we have an annual meeting on Sunday. We have Jews in Television Saturday night. If you want to join, 6 o'clock service, 7 o'clock, we'll talk about the history of Jews in television. Saturday is a regular service. And then for other events coming up, we're working on the men's Seder. We realized we had picked the wrong date we couldn't do, so we're switching that date. That was a lot of our fault, especially mine. We have the Backpack Buddies honor service on the 4th, which I think will be very nice. And then I'm teaching at Ollie on the 6th. I don't know if anybody science. I'm doing the science fiction thing again. So I'm not ready. So that should be fun. All right. Everyone
Lots
stay
going on.
safe.
All right.
All right.
Take care, everybody.